All right. So, good afternoon, everybody. Thanks for joining us. This is really cool. Excited that we get to do this again. We were able to do this over the summer and had a real great time. And we get to do this again, and we got to get everybody books. And that's what I'm grateful for. We can one of many things I'm grateful for that we get to do this one more time here. So let's just jump right into it. I want to respect your time. Thank you for joining us. So one of the things or I kind of like to do when I start PDs lately here is do a land acknowledgement. So I'm coming at you from Lancaster, specifically Lancaster Boulevard, and in the Antelope Valley, we're teaching and we're learning in land that was originally occupied, stewarded, and sustained by indigenous peoples. And specifically in the AV, we pursue our life, our work, our education, and the traditional lands of the peoples that I've listed here on this slide. And I just want to honor and uh, pay respects to the original inhabitants of this land, as is customary when doing a land acknowledgement. Uh, want to provide you with a couple of resources. And so the slides are in Google Classroom, and so you can find the links to these. But there's two here on this slide. One is this Canadian website, nativeland.ca, and you can go there and type in some town in your any town in North America, and it'll sort of give you this color-coded map of the people who originally inhabited the land with links, and you can go and learn more about them. And so if you want to learn more specifically about the original inhabitants of the Antelope Valley, there's the AVIM uh, out in way east Lancaster, and you can check out their website, and that'll take you directly to somewhere where you can learn more about um, those who are here before us. All right. So here's our agenda for today. We're going to go over objectives, norms, and logistics. Those of you who are just joining us, welcome. Uh, Go ahead, just as an extra layer of making sure you're here in the chat. If you'll just tell us one thing or person that you're grateful for, and just to show that you're here, or you can just say hello, and that's totally fine. But here's our agenda for today. We're going to go over our objectives, norms, and logistics. So this is a paid PD, and so I want to show you how it is, what you have to do in order to get paid. So I want to make sure that that's clear. We'll do a couple of breakout sessions around the introduction in chapter 1. If you didn't quite finish reading chapter 1, that's okay. We'll give you a few things to discuss specifically. Okay. Then we'll do an exit ticket and a quick launch to send us away. So a very fast-paced hour we'll spend together, and so let's keep going here. So here's our main objective specifically for today. We want to discuss culturally responsive teaching as a framework for instruction. So sort of an overall framework for how we will be doing what we do for our profession, right? The reason is to improve outcomes for students of all cultural backgrounds, and the success criteria for today is if we can apply culturally responsive teaching and strategies and practices to classroom instruction. So we'll get some introductory information, and if we can take some ideas and try to put it into our everyday teaching, then great. That we'll call that a success. All right. There you go. So our norms for the meeting here. First of all, I want to keep an open mind and an open heart. We'll be discussing some things that might be a little touchy, and so let's all keep an open mind and an open heart and share our experiences and also listen to others. So, you know, while we're given opportunities to share, we'll be in breakout rooms every time, multiple breakout rooms every time. So as we do that, let's seek understanding and growth. So, you know, our goal here is professional development, right? To develop ourselves professionally, and let's keep that in mind. As we do that, let's monitor our airtime in our groups, right? So if we tend to want to share a lot, that's amazing, that's great, but be aware that you'll have other folks in your breakout room as well, and so let's share the time. The other thing is to be present and actively participate. You know, don't expect that to be an issue all summer long. That was like, you know, we had like up to 90 people in one session, and you know, it was a lot of participation, and that was great. And so, you know, that said, it's the end of the day. If you're in a situation where you're like, I can't camera right now, that's totally fine, you know. But we would love to see your faces as we interact, especially in the breakout rooms. But you know, if you're like, no, I can't right now, that's totally fine. We would respect that. But we will get the most out of this if we participate in the discussions. That's part of the brain part of culturally responsive teaching, and the brain is to be communicating, as we'll see through the weeks. Okay, we'll be assigning assignments in Google Classroom. I don't think they're too difficult or you know, like, they're not gotcha things. They're just activities to help you process the reading. So you do the reading and then you process it through these activities. You know, as best you can, have it done before our session so that it'll help the discussion, right? You'll get the most out of the discussion that way. And speaking of our discussions, if a discussion we have ever makes you feel uncomfortable, please do reach out to us. You have our contact info, and you know, reach out to either myself, Anna, Yasmin, or Ben, and we will you know, be sure to address whatever concerns you might have. And then if there's anything else, please let us know also. Let us know, you know, if there's something else we should have as a norm, and we will add it in future meetings, okay? So let's get some logistics out of the way. First, you'll get 1 hour of pay for each, for actively participating in these virtual meetings. So they're 1 hour long. You log in, we get the spreadsheet that's automatically generated. As an added layer of making sure we see that you're here and participating, we'll have a something for you to say in the chat at the beginning, and an exit ticket at the end. So you have to sign in and out when prompted to do so, just to make sure that, you know, we can get you covered. You also get 2 hours for reading, completing, and this is very important, submitting the assignments in Google Classroom between virtual meetings. So you know, do the thing, and then hit the submit or the turn in button, right? Mark is done, whichever applies. You know, we're not going to be digging around for things, but we're using it as a way of keeping track so that you get paid for it, okay? So that's really important. So make sure you submit the work, all right? So the timesheets are going to be turned in at the completion of the book study. We found that was just an easier way to get things processed. So you can expect up to 13 hours if you do everything, if you come to all the meetings, do all the you know, assignments in between. And this should be reflected in your January 5th check. You know, fingers crossed. But that's the goal. December would be awesome, and we'll try to push that, but definitely January. Okay. And if you want to keep going, if you want to keep the conversation going, we have a couple of ways to do that if you're so inclined. One is a Padlet. And we left things from the summer participants in there just because, hey, let's keep the conversation going. Let's extend the conversations. And if you click on that link, and it's in Google Classroom, and it's also at the very top of the classwork in Google Classroom. You'll see it's divided up by columns. Each column represents each chapter. So while you're reading the chapter or after you've read the chapter, you can go in there and see what people thought, some extra things that people may have come up with. And I think there's like links to videos that relate to something that came up, and just comments. Feel free to read through those and just add your own. And that'll be great to be able to have to continue that conversation. Also, you're free to have text chains with each other, discuss on your own when you get back on to campus. On Wednesday, you'll be like, hey, saw you at the book study, and go ahead and talk about it. We left the comments open in Google Classroom too, so we could continue the conversation there as well. Okay. All right. So let's jump into this. So week one, we're titling this "Climbing Out of the Gap," and we're basing this on some of the information in the introduction and in chapter 1, so pages 1 through 20 in the book. So just to kind of get a feel of where we are on a scale of 1 to 5 in the chat, let us know where are you. Where would you say you are in your understanding of culturally responsive teaching? Where 1 is I don't know, and 5 means I could run a PD on this. So go ahead. Whoa, 31. No, I'm just kidding. 3.5. Okay, cool. All right, great. Okay, so yeah, we've in the gambit there, it kind of have met the entire spectrum there. All right, awesome. Thank you for that. All right, so a few things from the introduction here. So just a few points to kind of frame our discussion. First, one thing that came up in the introduction, Hammond mentioned that where you grow up shouldn't determine the type of education you get. And one thing that at least stuck out to me was this the difference, this differentiation between a independent, self-directed learner and a dependent learner, right? And she talked about the 2 schools that she had attended, and how a lot of her classmates were dependent learners in one place, and then independent learners in another. Another highlight here, kind of want us to think about, is that brain-based approaches work. They are effective, right? And it's more than just a motivational tool. Culturally responsive teaching is a tool that accelerates learning, so it's effective. Like it works, right? And then there's this. So again, like a difference between low-level worksheets versus analytical work. And one of the things we want to get our students to be is these independent learners, where they own their learning and want to self-motivate and self-direct their learning, and we can be facilitators. And that's the goal, right? And hopefully our study of this book will help get us there. Okay? So let's discuss. I'm going to put us all into randomized breakout rooms. In those breakout rooms, you'll have a few tasks here, or one task actually. So let me set up the rooms here, and we've got, all right, that should work. All right, in your groups, do a quick intro, and I'll just see who's in the room. And then share one quote from the introduction or chapter 1 that you highlighted, and why you highlighted it. If time permits, do a second round. All right, we're going to do this for about 15 minutes. All right, so maybe a little less than 15, and then we'll do a whole group share after. So to make things easier, let's have the person with the longest hair go first. So whoever has the longest hair in the group, that's who's going to go first. Then the next longest, and up until the person with the shortest hair. All right. And then if you want to nominate somebody to be a timekeeper, and then one person to be the designated person to share out if you feel so inclined when we come back, then we can do that. Okay. All right. So before I break us up, what questions do you have?
Hey, David, real quick.
Yeah.
I know some people might have just got the book because it was in maybe in their box, or they didn't get it till Monday. So yeah. Could you put the previous slide on? Maybe just to at least maybe discuss that. And some might not even have the book on them right now, and that's okay. And we apologize too. We did try to get them in at the end of the day on Friday, so we apologize for that shortage of time to get it, read it, and go through it.
Yeah, no, thank you for that. All right, any other questions? I saw something pop up in the chat, but I have the breakout rooms here.
And how many people are going to be in the group, just so that they know how much time we should?
Thank you. There should be 4 people per group, except for one group has 2. Hey, welcome back. So if you all nominated a person to share, will you push that person forward and go ahead and share what's one thing that came out of the group discussion?
I can share for our group. One thing that we shared out each quote, but one thing that we talked about is the discrepancy that we see in our lives when it comes to what's expected of us. You know, we shared about our family history, our personal history, and our relationship history, and how we got different things from our education, but it particularly referred back to the quote on page 14. The reality is that they struggle not because of their race, language, or poverty. They struggle because we don't offer them sufficient opportunities in the classroom to develop the cognitive skills and habits of mind that would prepare them to take on more advanced academic skills. So we need academic problem solving to move up in skills development for students, and it's not just tied to poverty.
Oh, great quote. Thank you. All right. Anybody else? It's Aaron. Yeah, go ahead.
I'll share out for group 1. You know, I'm starting to wonder if, because we are all in this same kind of passionate field of work, that we have many of the same highlighted sections. Stephanie, that was the quote I shared with my group, so it's totally awesome. But a lot of us in our group keyed in on page 15 at the beginning of the paragraph after the 3 bullet points. And I'll just paraphrase it as we've all read it. And that is just that asking people to work harder is not the complete solution to the problem. The grit factor is great, but if they don't get trained to think at higher levels, they don't get challenged with more complex thinking tasks, the grit doesn't get you very far. And so we kind of focused in on that.
Yeah, no, that's yeah, you're right. There are a lot of I'm sure overlaps in a lot of our highlights and stuff. So thank you. All right. Get one more to share. Oh, go ahead.
One of the things that we share in our group, it was talking about one of the questions that are in the introduction. Why are so many students of color or EL underachieving? And we touch upon the lack of belief on the innate intellectual potential of the students due to the cultural, absence of relevance in connecting with this student. And we gave the example of the author coming from a different school in their neighborhood and finding out that her education was way different than her peers from the old neighborhood. And for example, the I think it was Mrs. Perlin. Then he gave us the opposite. When she left the neighborhood and came to our area, it was completely different. It was probably from coming from an educated parents. Am I correct, Miss Perlin?
Miss Child is Miss Childs.
Oh, Miss
Yeah.
Charles. Sorry.
Yeah.
And then
I shared that I had the opposite happen when I lived in South Central. I actually received a better education, and it could be because I went to private school when I lived there. Then when I came here, I did have something similar. I think Miss Perline was talking about how teachers sometimes don't know what to do with certain kids. So that happened to me, not for being a bad kid, but more so because I was so ahead of the kids and I had received a private education. So a different education. When I moved to Palmdale, the teachers didn't know what to do with me.
yes.
And so I had something similar, but a little bit different.
Yeah, that's. I'm sure a lot of our students would be able to relate to that in some to some degree too. So, no, those are great observations, and yeah, all of you shared. So the next sort of thing we wanted to address is the big picture of the book, and it's this Ready for Rigor framework. The rest of the book is divided into these quadrants, and that's sort of what's going to frame future meetings. We'll be looking at things from one of the quadrants in this framework. And so we're going to put you back into breakout rooms, and I've mixed them up, and I will drop a link to the framework if you want to have a fresh look at it, or if you weren't able to get the book yet. And in your groups, again, about 15 minutes, maybe a little less than 15 minutes, just as we have a processing thing we would like you to do before we depart today. So answer these three questions here. Which area, looking at the four quadrants, which area is most challenging to address in your opinion? These are opinion questions, right? What is so challenging about it, and what can we do to address those challenges? And we're not going to solve all the problems, but let's start the conversation. And as we go through the coming meetings, we'll have more time to discuss some of these as we go on. So let me mix you up, and we'll do about 15 minutes, a little under 15 minutes to discuss this. Actually, we'll probably be able to get about 15 minutes. So, all right, please jump right in.
I'll go ahead and share from our discussion. As we were looking at the chart, we thought all of them definitely could have their challenges with the students, but the information processing we talked about a little bit, because the student at some level has to be willing to process that information. So we thought that was difficult, especially for students who are really shut down. And then as far as the awareness, we talked a little bit about like our own biases coming into that awareness, and like being able to realize what we're bringing sort of to the table along with the students and then their families. That's a lot of dots to connect. And so we were talking a little bit about that as well.
I was going to say in our group, I think we definitely went back and forth between learning partnerships and information processing. I think I kind of thought that supporting each student to take greater ownership of his learning right now has been difficult, especially in a time where, I think this post-pandemic time where there's a lot of social emotional, thinking going on, and I think people are still trying to deal with a lot of that. So taking responsibility to reduce that among students is pretty important. And trying to connect their new content to culturally relevant examples, I think, is always important. Making sure that what we're giving them, vocabulary or whatever, they're able to And I teach ESS English 12, so making sure that they're able to connect somehow to their own world.
That's good. I teach ESS English 12 as well, and it's all that perspective, so it goes along really well with that.
Yeah, actually, perspective, springboard, that's what we're learning right now.
That's what we're doing too.
Oh, okay, so yeah.
Mm-hmm.
We might have to connect.
I know.
Nice. Love it.
That's what these things are good for.
Yeah. Cool. One more person to share.
In my group, we talked a lot about information processing too, and how that's difficult because of the self-reflection, self-awareness you need to have to be able to recognize your own biases and in trying to overcome them. But we also talked a lot about the feedback and having the time to do that wise feedback portion. You know, that sometimes we want to make sure we give them feedback, but we don't always have the time or take the time maybe to give them feedback that is, well, wise, relevant, you know. So that was a challenge that we talked about.
Awesome. No, thank you. Thank you for sharing. Yeah, thank all of you for being open and you know, just honest about and reflective about all of these things. One, I know for Ben and I, this is our third time going through this in this kind of a setting. We were participants, and then we led one over the summer, or co-led, and then now this time. And at least for me, I did, like, I've had questions going through, and then they get answered, and then I have like 2 other questions about how to address these things. And but I think that's a good thing, you know. So hopefully some answers will come, and we're at the end of our time together. I wanted to give you some time to do this next thing, because we are at the end of the day here, and so wanted to give you some time. So, but before we do though, this is our schedule. All right. So keep that in mind. I think I had said on the little paper that was in the book when you got it that I accidentally had said it goes till 4. It's till 4:30, so it's 1 hour. So thank you for if you were expecting to leave at 4, you know, thank you for sticking around. But it's 3:30 to 4:30. Make sure, if you haven't already, well, actually, you all would have gotten into the Google Classroom, so that's great. And if you have any questions going through, please let us know. In the Google Classroom, this is sort of what it'll look like. The chapters 2 and 3 will pop up sometime you know, later, if it hasn't already. But each week, except for the first week, we'll have 2 things. We're going to have an assignment and a post, right? Or a material rather. The material will be the slides for that week, and then an assignment. The assignment will be a document or a Google slide that you can edit, right? And that's where you will do the processing activity. And there'll be like 2 activities, 1 for each chapter, right? And that'll add up to 2 hours of pay for having done that. But you do have to remember to please turn it in. So hit the turn in button when you're ready to turn it in, and make sure you do both chapters, right? If you only do 1 chapter, we have to, you know, only give you credit for the 1 hour. But if you do both, we'll give you credit for both.
Is that starting with chapter 2, David?
Yeah. So next week will be you'll be looking at chapters 2 and 3, and this schedule is in the classwork tab in Google Classroom. So there's 2 things at the top that aren't categorized. One of them is the Padlet, and the other one is this slide where you can see what the schedule is. Okay. And then leave you with this launch. In the interest of time, we won't watch this video, but if you want to take some time and watch the video, this was a really great TED Talk that was shared with us while we were going through the summer version of this. You don't have to submit any work for chapter 1 and in the introduction. So the 13 hours, if you do all of it, that's participating today and then doing the homework for chapters 2 and 3 and moving forward. So great question, thank you. So for next week, in the classwork tab in Google Classroom, you'll find chapter 2 and 3, and the title of that group we called Culture in the Brain. It really, those 2 chapters helped get me through the pandemic when I would go to family functions and people were arguing, and then I would just get mad at them, you know, for anyway. So then I understood, oh, I know why you're reacting this way, and it really helped me. And I think there's of course there's applications to the classroom, so I hope that'll you'll find value there. So by our next meeting on the 28th, read chapters 2 and 3 and complete the processing activity. Our launch comes from this video, and one quote from the video says, "The first step to solving any problem is to not hide from it. And the first step to any form of action is awareness." And that is what we're, the first quadrant is all about, is awareness. And so let's be aware of things that we can fix and address and, you know, do something about it, right? And so in the chat, I'm gonna put in this link to a survey. All right, it's anonymous, and we realize that it's not a there's some personal things in there that we're asking you to do. So feel free to skip any questions that you don't feel comfortable skipping, or if the multiple choices are not don't really apply to you, there's a open-ended one where you can clarify. But we'll be using the data from this in one of the future meetings. Okay. Yeah, Aaron, what's up?
So I'm in a precarious situation with my phone here and everything, and so would that all be sent to us via email or posted in the Google Classroom for this, so that I can do that survey and answer those questions later?
Yeah, absolutely. It's already in Google Classroom. So if you open up the presentation and go to the last slide, which is this one, it's linked right here. So the word survey is a hyperlink to the survey. And yeah, and so we're out of time here. So if you want to take your own time to answer the survey, please do. We would appreciate it, just so we can have that data to kind of take a look at and do some a reflective activity at a future meeting. But with that, we leave you with this launch. If you have time, this is a great TED Talk, very encouraging, very convicting, I think. So thank you so much for joining us, and can't wait to see you in a couple weeks.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.